Hello there, and welcome back. Today, special episode, so we're going to skip the usual nonsense at the start. I am interviewing friend, musician, bon vivant, Ryan Gavalier, who is releasing, or as you are watching this, has just released, hopefully, his debut EP, Cynthia, with an S, Cynthia. Ryan, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Synthia is the name of the EP.
I called it the Cynthia EP.
Yeah. So it's not just Synthia, it's the Synthia EP, like the Yes album. Yeah. So it's the full thing. So let's go back to the start, because people who might know your music might associate you more with guitar based and a lot of bass and things. So where did the synth come into it?
Well, all right. So I've always been interested in the synthesizers. I just think they have like a kind of all-encompassing capability to them, so many different sounds and such, and just so many knobs that you can really warp things around. So I've always been interested. But I went to a concert actually wearing the hat, 9 Inch Nails, Ministry, Nitro Ebb. So it was a lot of synthesizer based musicians. And when I was watching it live, just people playing with the synths and stuff and all that they were doing with it, I was like, I just need to go get one myself. So after that, I just started practicing for a little while and just started writing songs on there. I've played piano for a long time and keyboard and stuff, so it wasn't too big of a learning curve for me, honestly. But yeah, I just started recording songs, and initially I was doing a lot of video gamey type music, and I was going to do a video game soundtrack, which I still plan on finishing one of these days, but I kind of let myself go in a different creative direction after I started doing some more avant-garde and like like sometimes the ambient, sometimes kind of funky, some kind of dance-esque, like a lot of different styles of music, some rock, some like kind of Pink Floydy psychedelic type stuff, just like a real eclectic mix of songs, but all kind of focusing, or at least featuring the synth, and then also featuring my drum machine as well.
Yeah.
And then guitar and bass as well on the album. But synth, I would say, is definitely what the backbone of this EP is, hence the name Cynthia. I think that it's definitely become my favorite instrument that I have, just because of how much you could do with it, how fun it is to jam on it. And it will definitely be featured on many future EPs and albums as well.
So you mentioned that the EPs and albums, you've been kind enough to kind of let me share in the project as it's evolved, and it has changed quite a lot. As you mentioned, it started out as some of the stuff you were letting me hear was very 16-bit video game, as you said, Metroid and the like. And it's changed quite a lot since then, as you have changed with the learning curve of your instruments, as you said. When did you decide, I'll cut it down a little bit and make it an EP rather than an album?
Honestly, pretty recently, because while I've always had an interest in doing an EP, because I think they're kind of cooler than albums, honestly. I feel like they kind of have like the aesthetic of just being kind of like up and coming, and kind of figuring out your way in music and stuff. So I think there's an appeal to them. But pretty recently, I sat down, because for a while I just kept recording tracks without any hope of an end, because I just was having so much fun recording more songs, that I just didn't feel a need to stop. So I don't know, like I just decided that when I was listening to the tracks, because I decided, you know what, I have like 40, 50 tracks here. I need to just put something out. So I sat down, and this individual project isn't like the 40, 50. I have like 40, 50 of other stuff as well. But this album or whatever, I have like 25 songs that I had to choose from. And I sat down and I listened to them all. And I was able to kind of group them into like individual little EPs that I would want. I'm like, I have a bit too versatile of a taste of what I want to make right now, to where I feel like some of this will not fit as a whole album, but as EPs that flow together really well, stylistically, and almost feel like you're in kind of like a fever dream. Yeah, I think that will work really well. And so that's when I decided to make this 6 songs and 26 minutes long, which it's definitely a long EP, but still an EP. And I'm really happy with that, because I've listened to the album or the EP as a whole quite a few times now, and I feel like the length is perfect. And you get an interesting variety of sounds.
So when you sent me the tracks, and I've only heard about 39 of them, so I'm quite disappointed here to find out there's 50. I'm quite disappointed. But when you sent me some of these tracks in different versions before they were finalized and whatnot, it was hard to kind of see what the whole would look like. And now that you've been kind enough to send me the advanced copy as well, it does have a very structured flow to it, although the tracks themselves are very free and loose. The vocoder, for example, is on like every other track. So was that a very conscious idea? So every other track's vocal, every other track's instrumental.
I've had an idea of that before I even got the synth, of just having a good blend of instrumental tracks and then songs with vocals. I think that once I realized that I was only going to have 6 tracks, I decided to make it the every other. And then from there, it was just listening to the songs in different combinations to see what sequencing I felt was the right sequencing. Like, I put the time into that, just thinking like, all right, what songs are gonna fit where? Like, it's not just a compilation of songs. It really does feel like you're going on kind of a journey a little bit as you listen to it. So yeah, that's basically how that came up.
So I mean, it does, because it just, please don't think, people, that I'm just forgetting the names of the tracks. Track 1 is called Track 1. Track 1 does kind of set the scene, doesn't it? With having especially the drum machines more prominent there. So it's like you're kind of saying, here's all the equipment you're going to hear in the next 26 minutes. There's a lot of repetition, almost Carpenter-like in that track.
Definitely. Yeah, that's track 1's that's a pretty involved track. You have a lot of different melodies on top of each other with the synths. Definitely more prominent drum machine, and then the synth bass is pretty hefty in that one too. There's a lot going on in that track, and I do think it kind of sets the scene. It doesn't, I mean, the songs, like, a couple of them sound more similar than others, but they fit stylistically together, even though they have different sounds, but they all kind of have a certain vibe. But I do think that first one sets the scene.
Yeah. And then Magic Power, track 2, is, you mentioned funk being in there. That's definitely the funk track for me. Synth funk guitar on overtime, and with a lot of licks in it that are very you. It even sounds like the music you were composing for your YouTube channel. It sounds like those little licks you were throwing in underneath all that music as well. But
Yeah,
with all the crazy funk stuff on top. So was that the intention there? Make a more funky track?
I think it intention. I think initially it definitely was supposed to be a funkier track, and I think it still has that.
Yeah.
I almost feel like the groove and some of the licks have a little bit more of like a Latin type of feel to it, though, like a samba at times or something like that.
Yeah, your licks
Um,
do. Yeah.
so I do think that's kind of like a dance track more than
Mhm.
anything. And but I think the initial intention was funk. I have some songs that are definitely more pure funk, like not on this project, but on ones that are going to be coming out relatively soon. Um, but this one, I think, kind of shows something that I tend to do. Like, I have genres that I'll gravitate toward at certain points of time. And so I'll I'll just take that genre sometimes and just kind of me it up a little bit,
Yeah.
just kind of make it a little weird, not really what it usually is. And I think that's kind of what I did with this.
Yeah, so it's not you doing funk, it's you doing you and bringing funk in more than anything else.
Yeah.
And then track three, which again is self-titled, if you will, shorter track, very eerie, sci-fi like,
Mhm.
kind of cool vibe to it, very cold and distant in a way. Was that a kind of, because it's kind of halfway through, is that a kind of intermission track almost, kind of, in between tracks kind of thing?
Well, I think when I made that song, it just was just another instrumental that I made. Like I just I would honestly, when I was writing a lot of those instrumentals, it was just me just jamming out and
Mm-hmm.
then finding a riff I really like or finding like a melody I really like and then going off of that. So the creation of it was pretty organic, and I wouldn't say there was any real intention.
Yeah.
It was just like me just searching for a sound and getting there basically. And but as I put this track onto the album, something I found that was interesting, and the reason why I sequenced it where it sequenced it is because it is a really short track and it feels like a transition.
Yeah.
Almost like if you look at like something like Black Sabbath Masters of Reality,
Mm-hmm.
how there's like those short little instrumentals once in a while on there. I kind of figured this one would be good for something like that. But another thing that's cool about this track is that the drum beat on this one is basically the same as the next song, So Lost.
Yeah,
So it
which,
almost feels like kind of a transition into
yes.
that
Yeah.
song.
Yeah.
Because I also intentionally made this track three, quieter in the mix than the rest of the tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Because then when So Lost comes in, it makes it even more potent when those hi-hats come in and
And
that beat and
I
everything.
must confess, we'll go straight into it because you're on there. I'm so lost. I was literally brushing my teeth this morning and I was going, I feel so lost. I feel so lost. I don't know where to go. I was like, wow, it's in my head already. That's crazy.
I
So,
need to floss.
yeah.
I need to
Lost like a boss.
please help me.
So 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 I mean that track is clearly infectious and catchy because I was literally singing it just
Yeah,
hours after you sent me the finalized version of the album or the EP. So that to me seems like the most instantly, you don't want to say single like, but if you had to pull one track and say single, that feels like it.
I agree. And I think that song is really, really interesting because I think the beat to it has a very hip hop type of beat with that loud hi hat.
Yeah.
which I intentionally did because it gives it like a claustrophobic and uncomfortable feel with that kind of menacing bass riff, that boom, 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 boom. It kind of
Yeah.
gives it a really eerie feeling. So you have that kind of like hip hop beat, this menacing bass riff, and then I'm singing in the vocoder, doing my best John Anderson performance I can possibly do. So it's like a hip hop yes song, basically.
Which is
But
what John Anderson's always been building towards. That's one. Yeah.
yeah, but it's not like actual hip hop. It's
No.
just that drum beat. It's still a very much a like psychedelic rock type of
Yeah.
song, electronic, progressive rock. This song was actually double the length, and I edited it
Yeah.
because I felt like that was better for the song. I felt like fading it out right where it goes into the I feel so lost
Yeah.
fade out. I thought that was a lot more emotionally impactful. So yeah, the song went from like 7 minutes to like 3.5 minutes.
Yeah. Quite a few of these tracks that I heard when they were just called like, track three or whatever. Well, the actual one is called track three. It's a bad example, but if it was called unfinished track, they are quite different in these finalized versions. But the seed was always there. It's like you knew what you were working towards. It was just kind of you've made the steak. You just need to finish the garnish now. So it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Sorry.
when I recorded this album, I really thrived off of spontaneity. um I mean, I would obviously practice some riffs and like flush things out, but a lot of these takes, like a lot of these songs have one take for a lot of the instruments. Like I wasn't looking for perfection on a lot of this stuff, even though I think for the most part I would say that it's mostly like free of flaws. I know there's a couple points where I'm like, oh, that sounds like a live album. And I'm like, I like that because
Yeah.
that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
But there's not too many. But I just think that this album is really based off of spontaneity more than anything. So in the editing process, though, I did make some changes just because I still wanted those good takes that were spontaneous, but just fine tune them a little bit. You know, if it was a song that went on too long, maybe cut it down a tiny bit, doing fade ins, fade outs, making everything flow together really
Yeah.
well, you know. So
Yeah.
there's definitely differences to the earlier drafts.
Yeah, it keeps the heart, keeps the soul.
Yeah.
It just to put it all together, you would have had an hour long record if you hadn't have edited it down. You haven't lost anything by doing so.
Yeah.
And then Synthia itself, the ostensible title track, it sounds like, as I said to you, it should be the perfect score for a Dune movie. It's better than Hans Zimmer's score for Dune. So it's got this epic, massive sci-fi feel to me, and it literally sounds like ships taking off and land, and I can almost see the planet Arrakis or something, or Baron Harkonnen's people coming in. That's what I was seeing in my mind's eye. What was the intent
Yeah.
behind that?
Well, that song, first of all, I must say the title, Cynthia, obviously is the title track. And it was a name that came from Davey right there. He was joking about my synth that I got and called it Cynthia, and I was like, oh, that's pretty funny. I like that name though for the album because it kind of gives it like kind of a gothic type of feel,
Yeah,
like King Diamond with Abigail and stuff like that. I was like, oh, Cynthia. And
yeah.
then there's the synth pun. So it's like, oh, Davey, your joke worked pretty well for a title. So thanks. Cool.
And that just came from, we were literally just when you picked up the synth last year, where you were saying, right, I'm going to head off now. I'm going to play the synth for a while, and it just became a running joke that your new girlfriend was called Cynthia. You know, this synth.
Yeah.
So you always spend the night with Cynthia. You know, who's Cynthia?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, don't know, but if you press the right button, she makes a good sound. So, what about the track
True that.
itself?
Yeah. So basically, though, like this track was kind of in a transitional time because, as I mentioned, I was originally doing kind of video gamey type of music, and I want to get back to that because I have some pretty good tracks that I want to release with that. But when I started making these long form ambient tracks, all instrumental and um, sparse instrumentation in some ways, I realized, I need to try some different directions too. I don't want to pigeonhole myself. So this was the third track I recorded in this kind of music. Um, it was the only one that I wanted to have on this album because I thought it was the best track. Some of the other ones have like hand percussion and stuff, and I think it's cool. But I think the lack of drums in this one makes it extremely powerful.
Yeah.
And definitely very ambient. I would say this song, while it's still very much just like me improving, me having fun, I'd say when I listen back to it, I'm like, oh, I've definitely listened to No Pussyfooting by Brian Eno and
Mhm.
Robert Fripp a couple times,
Yeah.
Um, and that's cool with me because I think like and then like progressive rock and stuff is definitely a very influential to me, and I'm glad that some little tinges of it came through on this album.
Mhm.
But this one I didn't make any edits to at all. This one I wanted to keep exactly the way it was
Yeah.
because I think it's honestly for me one of my favorite tracks that I've recorded. I've had multiple people also say that it's one of their favorites they've heard. I think there's just something beautiful, melancholy at times, haunting, scary at
Dark. Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
It really feels like, honestly, like an ambient version of like a classical piece or
Mhm.
something. Like it does feel like a composition. It doesn't just feel like jerking around or something. It
Yeah.
feels like it has intent.
Film score is exactly what I was thinking the whole time. It feels
Yeah.
like the soundtrack to a film that's not been made. It just wow, this is evocative. You know, you can almost feel a screenplay coming off of it. It's quite remarkable. It's
Yeah.
so
And I think,
that would be the
oh,
fans' favorite. You know, if we say that "So Lost" is a single, this would be the deep cut that all the fans love. I think.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the reason why this comes off that way too is because a lot of these ambient tracks were at a like highly emotional point for me.
Yeah.
Some stuff happened with some friends and stuff, so I was in an emotional time. And I was very much using music as like my escape during those emotions. So this is very much like a soundtrack of that in some ways. So there's a lot of heart to it, and I think
Mm,
that's where the intent came from.
yeah. Yeah. And then the last track, Your Love, another vocal track because it's every other track, as we said. And what would almost be too plaintive if you did it on, say, an acoustic guitar, those kind of lyrics, it wouldn't work at all. But doing it with the vocoder, those kind of lyrics where it is you just repeating, reasonably standard phrases about love and repeating the word love over and over in different ways. And then those great lines like, I know this might sound insane to you. These things I say are true. I really need your love. It has that has another really haunting and melancholy quality to go out with. So was that a sequencing intent to go out on a kind of not a darker note, but certainly a haunting note?
Well, all right. So I have to be honest about this song. So this song I wrote initially as a joke. Um,
It's not very funny.
yeah, well, I ended up turning it into a
Yeah,
good song,
I know.
but I wanted to have like a saccharine love ballad to
Yeah,
just throw off the vibe of like the otherwise pretty weird and experimental album.
yeah.
Um, Almost to make people be like, what the hell? Like, because a lot of bands will do that because they want to have a single. Me, I just kind of wanted to fuck with people. So it's
Mhm.
like, but by the time I actually started making the song, I was like, oh, you know what? I could actually do something pretty cool with this.
Yeah,
So, I still did add some like cheesiness to it, like, but I think it works really well. Like those synth melodies
yeah.
during the chorus, kind of intentionally wanted that to sound like some kind of like Brian Adams ballad or something to get that kind of hamminess going.
Yes, but it's good though, folks. It's good. Don't let that put you off.
No, yeah, that's the thing. I don't know. I'm not Brian Adams. I can't make music that bad.
Yeah.
But just kidding, he's fine. But um but yeah, I don't know. Then like just kind of an overall, I don't know. I have like the melodies, they kind of have like a I mean the harmonies, they have kind of
Hmm.
like a Bee Gees type of feel during the choruses and stuff. Um and one thing that I liked about this one that I did was originally I did have a bass track on this song.
Hmm.
Um, and I took the bass track off and I was like, oh, this sounds way better because the synths and stuff kind of make it feel like you're floating in a cloud more so.
Yeah.
It's definitely like a high ambience during the verses and stuff where it's like the lyrics are literally like floating on clouds because there's
Yeah.
no actual like solid rhythm behind them
Yeah.
almost. It's like
Yes.
it's interesting.
It's like when Prince decided to take the bass out of When Doves Cry,
Yeah.
lifted it up, it gives
I
it,
just thought it sounded better. I mean,
yeah,
I love the bass,
yeah.
but it was taking away from the song. That low end was just adding a certain density to it that it didn't need.
And knowing that you've got plans, should we say, for a funk based project at least. I'm sure the bass has got plenty of time to come back into good standing. So
Yeah.
I mean, as I said, the actual if you did that as an acoustic track, it would come off as funny. It would come off as corny because the lyrics are so lovey dovey. It's like George
Yeah.
Lucas wrote some of them, but doing it in that style, not doing it, say just with an acoustic, does take away. Like it could have been. I'm trying to think of an example, like Cripple Creek Ferry at the end of After the Gold Rush. Where it's
Mm,
it's almost like you're ending on a joke. But actually, it fits in well with the rest of the album anyway. So
yeah.
yeah, so
No,
good,
that
good to them.
it's definitely interesting in that regard. And one thing I want to mention real quick, you
Mm-hmm.
talked about the bass. Yeah. One thing that will be different about some of the future ones, this album is almost entirely synth bass.
Mm-hmm.
I don't I don't think there's I think one track on here with real bass, but I want to say that the rest of it is all just synthesizer bass. But some of the more funky tracks I've been doing are gonna have real bass on them
Or you could
and
do some, I
more.
don't know, some Stanley Clark like stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
But Ryan, yeah, listen, thanks very much for this. This has been a hell of a journey to be on. Even just with you, just watching from the sidelines, as it's all come together. It must have been an exciting time now that you've submitted it, and by the time this goes out, people will be able to click below and actually listen to it all and whatnot. Any final thoughts on the project now that that's EP1 done and dusted, the Cynthia EP?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty surreal, honestly, to be releasing this. I mean, I feel like while it's not my first album yet, it is really to me.
Yeah.
I think that I still, when I do release my first album, I know there's still things I want to work toward for that, but I think for this EP, um, there's an interesting amount of growth you'll see throughout the tracks. And I think that there's a lot to take from it for different genres that people appreciate. I do think there is a versatility to it. And it definitely won't be the last one. Things might be very different on the next one. Things might be
Good.
very different on every single one.
Good.
But there's gonna be much more coming out. So
You've
yeah.
always been eclectic, if nothing else. That's your number one adjective with Ryan is eclecticism. Never rests on his laurels. So Ryan, seriously, well done with this. This is, and I'm not just saying this because we're friends. This is really good, really, really good stuff.
Thank you.
I'm impossibly happy for you, and as a friend, proud of you. It's a wonderful, wonderful listen, and oof, links below, folks, in the comments and the description, just so you really can't miss them. And yeah, we'll be pimping this like hell. Don't worry.
Yeah, and one more thing
Please
too.
do, yeah.
So the album is probably the album is going to be originally featured on Apple Music, iTunes, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Amazon, YouTube Music. So it's on a lot of platforms digitally. It'll be the Synthia EP by Ryan Gavalier, but I am also thinking of doing a physical run too. And I'm not going to do it without knowing if there's a general interest, because I'll buy all the supplies and stuff myself and just take care of it. So if you're interested in physical run, just let us know in the comments too. I mean, it's something I'll be happy to do, but I'm just kind of gauging the interest in it first.
Yeah, well, interested.
Thanks.
And no, in fact, sold. Never mind interested. It's like, tick on Facebook, interested or going. So yeah, that will be exciting should that come to pass. But regardless, this is a wonderful achievement. If all the links aren't up yet, because Ryan's having to have them approved by the different platforms, we'll wait until a good chunk of them are in and then get this posted. So by the time you watch this, most of them should be there, the main ones at least. And again, give Ryan some feedback. He's obviously still on YouTube, although he's not uploading as much, but he's still there on Ryan's Vinyl Destination. And you can find his Facebook page, his Instagram as well. That's just under Ryan's Vinyl Destination as well, isn't it?
The Instagram is Vinyl Destination 1984.
1984. He was born in 97, but 84, why not? So listen, Ryan, thank you very much for this and congratulations once again.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on. It was a good time.
The good time was mine, my friends, getting to listen to this. This has been fantastic. So looking forward to the next one.
Thank you.
What have you done for me lately? I'm already waiting. So folks, again, links below. Let us know all your comments, all your feedback, unless it's bad, in which case you can talk to me. All right. But and let Ryan know about if you're interested in a physical format as well, because we'd love to see that. Physical media rules. Ryan, thanks very much. And folks out there, thank you very much for your time and support Ryan.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.